They thought we were tamed. The Galactic Council had declared Earth pacified, a minor world now under the enlightened rule of the interstellar order. They had studied our species from afar, measured our civilizations, and analyzed our history of war. Their conclusion was unanimous: humanity had evolved beyond its savagery. They were wrong. They mistook our silence for submission, our treaties for weakness. And when they demanded a representative to serve as an envoy species, a token of our obedience, it wasn't our diplomats who volunteered. It was our wolves. The call to submission. The message arrived in the dead of night, piercing through the electromagnetic hum of Earth's endless digital noise. A council relay station nestled among Saturn's rings beamed it down in perfect standard galactic. The pacification of Earth is complete. The human species has been deemed non-threatening and fully integrated into the order. As a sign of goodwill, an envoy will be selected from among your kind to serve in the Council's assembly. This individual will represent the compliant nature of Earth's species. The selection process begins immediately. The announcement was met with stunned silence. For centuries, humans had waited for first contact. The Galactic Council had ignored us, watching from afar, observing like gods peering down upon ants. When they finally spoke, it wasn't to welcome us. It was to declare us conquered. Earth had not been invaded. No great war had been fought. Instead, the Council had simply decided we no longer mattered. The era of human sovereignty, in their eyes, had ended before it had even begun. Politicians scrambled to craft responses. News channels erupted in debate. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to negotiate. But before any decision could be made, an answer had already been sent. Not by the leaders of Earth, but by the wolves. A predator's answer. The transmission had been hijacked. A response, crudely translated into standard galactic, was broadcast from a secure research station in the Siberian wilderness. We accept. No human had sent it. The message came from them. The wolves of Earth. Genetically enhanced, hyper-intelligent, engineered for cognition equal to, perhaps even greater than, humans. The product of a decades-old military experiment. The world had long believed them a myth, a failed project buried beneath the snow. They had remained hidden, watching, learning, waiting. And now, when the moment had come, they had stepped forward. The Council had asked for an envoy. The wolves had volunteered. The Council's shock. When the delegation arrived, they expected a meek diplomat, a well-groomed representative of Earth's pacified species. They prepared their finest receptions, adjusted their ceremonial robes, and practiced their patronizing speeches. What they got instead was a nightmare. The first wolf stepped off the transport ship in silence. 7 feet tall when standing on its hind legs, its fur sleek and black as midnight, eyes gleaming with an intelligence no alien had ever encountered. Its pack followed, a dozen in total, moving with the lethal grace of born hunters. The Council's reception faltered. The creatures before them were nothing like the docile representatives they had expected. What is this? A counselor choked on his words. The lead wolf, named Fenrir in honor of an old Earth legend, lowered its muzzle and bared its teeth, an unmistakable, predatory grin. You asked for an envoy, it said, voice guttural yet perfectly articulated. We accepted. Silence fell upon the Grand Chamber. The counselors had encountered thousands of species in their time, civilized diplomats, learned scholars, even warlike races with strict codes of battle. But never had they seen a creature like this. A predator. A species that did not beg, did not plead, did not cower. The lead counselor, a reptilian being whose species had once dominated the galactic wars, took a step back. He could feel it, an ancient instinct buried in the marrow of his bones. Fear. The humans had sent their wolves, and the galaxy would never be the same. For the first time in centuries, the council chambers knew silence. Not the respectful quiet of diplomats considering proposals. Not the heavy pause before an official declaration. This was a different silence, the kind that lived in the seconds before a predator struck. The wolves of Earth had arrived, and the council, rulers of 1,000 worlds, masters of diplomacy and war, were afraid. The first mistake. High Chancellor Varos of the Zevan Dominion, a species of cold-blooded reptilians known for their cunning and ruthlessness, was the first to recover. He smoothed his regal crimson robes, squared his shoulders, and forced himself to step forward. Explain yourselves. His voice, trained for authority, barely wavered. This is a council for sapient species. Where is the human envoy? The lead wolf, Fenrir, tilted his head slightly. The motion was slow, deliberate, like a hunting beast assessing its prey. I am the envoy. His voice rumbled through the chamber. Not shouted, not growled, just spoken. Yet it carried the weight of something old, something that had survived ice ages and wars before the first alien empire had even learned to shape fire. You are not human. Varro spat the words. This is unacceptable. A second wolf, smaller but no less fearsome, stepped forward. Her fur was a silver sheen beneath the artificial lights. We are more than human, she said. The words were spoken not in defiance but in simple truth. Varro sneered. You expect us to believe that Earth, a pacified world, sent you as their representatives? Fenrir's golden eyes met his, unblinking. No, he said. We sent ourselves. The murmuring among the counselors grew louder. This was an impossibility. The Galactic Council had categorized Earth as a world of lesser threats, a species that had supposedly outgrown its primitive, warlike nature. And yet, before them stood something impossible. Not prey. Not subjects. But predators. The Pact of Domestication. A counselor from the feathered Rylith species, known for their meticulous records and legalistic minds, ruffled his wings in visible agitation. This is a violation of the Pact of Domestication. He screeched. No species deemed pacified may send military representatives. This is unprecedented. Fenrir did not blink. We are not military. Varro scoffed. You expect us to believe that? The silver-furred wolf, Skadi, gave a toothy grin. You misunderstand. We were never meant for war. She turned her head toward the vast chamber, her gaze sweeping across the gathered representatives. Tell me, rulers of the galaxy, what do you know of wolves? The Rylith counselor fluffed his feathers. A lesser offshoot of the Canidi evolutionary branch, he sniffed. Originally a wild predator, domesticated into irrelevance by human intervention. A footnote in evolutionary history. Fenrir let out something that wasn't quite a growl. Not anger. Amusement. You think we were domesticated? The chamber grew colder. The truth is simpler, Fenrir continued. We were never tamed. We chose to stay. A silence hung in the air like a blade waiting to drop. You see, Skadi added, humans did not conquer us. They did not break us, did not leash us, did not strip away what we were. They did something far more dangerous. She leaned forward, her piercing eyes locking onto the Rylith counselor. They made us partners. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled species. Warfare, conquest, slavery, these were things they understood. These were things they had built their empires upon. But this was alien. A species that fights for another. Varros clenched his jaw. What madness is this? A lesser species cannot serve as equals to a dominant one. It is the order of nature. It is the foundation of the Galactic Council. Fenrir's gaze turned to him, and for the first time he took a step forward. The movement was smooth, effortless. Predatory. You see only what you wish to see, Chancellor, he said. To you there is only hierarchy. The strong command. The weak obey. He stopped just short of the counselor's pedestal. That is why you will never understand us. Varro stiffened but did not step back. Around the chamber, however, the smaller, weaker species did. Even those from warlike civilizations seemed to recognize something primal in Fenrir's presence. Humans never sought dominance over us, Fenrir continued. They did not break us. Instead they ran beside us. They fought with us. They bled with us. Skadi took another step, her silver fur gleaming beneath the council's artificial lights. And so, when the time came, we did what no other species in your so-called council has ever done. Varro scowled. And what exactly is that? Fenrir grinned, and this time it was a growl. We chose to fight for them. The council's fear. The words landed like thunder. In the vast history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever volunteered to fight on behalf of another. Armies were raised by force, by conquest, by servitude. Empires fought for control, for dominance. But never had a species fought out of loyalty. Out of choice. Varros tried to regain control. This is absurd, he scoffed. Even if I believed your fantasy, what difference does it make? Earth is pacified. You have no weapons. No armies. Fenrir let out a quiet sound. Not laughter. Not quite. You think we need weapons? Varro's scowl deepened. You have nothing, he spat. A few genetically enhanced predators do not make an empire. Skadi's grin widened. We are not an empire, she said. We are a pack. And in that moment something shifted in the room. A tension, a weight in the air. The counselors could feel it now, That unseen force, that presence that had been lurking beneath the surface since the wolves arrived. They were being watched. For every wolf standing before them, another lurked unseen. Silent shadows in the rafters, waiting in the corridors, blending into the darkness of the chamber's farthest reaches. The council had assumed that only one envoy had arrived. They were wrong. The wolves had come as they always had, together. The pack was here. And the galaxy would never be the same. A slow realization crept through the chamber like a cold wind slithering under a door. They were surrounded. The wolves hadn't arrived alone. Of course they hadn't. They never hunted alone. The council had been so preoccupied with who had come that they'd never thought to ask how many. Even now, in the rafters, in the corridors, in the hidden spaces where bureaucrats and guards usually stood, they watched. Golden eyes gleamed from the darkness. Unblinking. Measuring. The pack had come to listen. The council chamber, a place of laws and treaties, now felt eerily similar to something much older, much simpler. A den. And the wolves had brought their own rules. The Alpha stirs. High Chancellor Varos' breathing had quickened, though he desperately tried to hide it. His claws tapped against the podium in a rhythm betraying his frustration. "This is an act of aggression," he finally said, his voice tight with rage. "You insult this council with your presence. You speak in riddles, claiming equality with a species that has outgrown you." Fenrir did not react. He simply stared. Varos hated that stare. That golden, patient gaze. It was not the look of a subject or a soldier. It was the look of a hunter waiting to see if his prey would run. "This is not aggression," Skadi said, her voice disturbingly calm. "If we wanted you dead, you would already be dead." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Varos' claws curled into fists. "Enough of this. You have no power here. You have no authority." Fenrir finally moved. It was a single step, just one, but the sound of his massive paw touching the polished floor was louder than it should have been. The counselors stiffened as if some primal part of them recognized what they were truly facing. "You misunderstand, Chancellor," Fenrir said softly. "We are not here to take power. We are here to remind you that you never truly had it." Silence. And then a voice, sharp and cutting, broke it. "You presume much, Wolf?" The new speaker was one who had, until now, remained silent. The Thalanar, a species with no homeworld, no empire, but more influence than any single race in the galaxy. They were the ones who enforced the treaties, who kept the balance of power in check. And when they spoke, the galaxy listened. The Thalanar delegate, a tall figure clad in shimmering exoskeletal armor, took a measured step forward. "You claim that you are equals to humanity, that you chose loyalty instead of submission. Yet you bring no proof, no fleets, no warships, no technology to match the great species of this council." The armored figure tilted its head. "So tell me, Fenrir of Earth, what do you offer?" Fenrir's tail flicked once, a subtle gesture. Skadi's grin widened. "Oh, we offer nothing," she said. "We warn." A lesson in war. A tense pause settled in the chamber. Varos sneered. "Warning? You come here, unarmed, outnumbered, without a single warship at your back, and you warn us?" Fenrir's gaze remained steady. "Yes." A ripple of soft laughter spread through some of the counselors, first uncertain, then mocking. "Do you think your primitive threats will frighten the council?" One of the avian Rylith delegates scoffed. "Your kind may be predators on one world, but you have never known real war." Fenrir let out a quiet, low noise that for the first time was a growl. "No," he said, tilting his head. "Tell me then, if Earth has never known war, why does your council's history speak of the Ashen Reckoning?" The laughter died instantly. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled species. The Ashen Reckoning. A term never spoken lightly. A war so devastating, so violent, that it had forced the council to recognize humans as a species not to be eradicated, but to be pacified. The war that had changed everything. "Ah," Skadi said softly. "You do remember." The Thalanar delegate did not flinch, but they also did not speak. Fenrir took another step forward, and now, his voice was a low rumble. "You thought humanity had forgotten," he said. "You believed they had changed. That the species you declared tamed had finally been broken." His gaze swept over the chamber. "But we remember." Skadi's voice was quieter but no less sharp. "And so does the galaxy." Varos' expression twisted in fury. "Enough of this. Humans lost that war. They accepted peace. They agreed to bury the past," Fenrir interrupted. "To pretend that they had not torn through your fleets. To ignore the fact that your council only won because it threw 1,000 worlds at them to drown them in sheer numbers. You took one more step. You know this, he said. And you fear it. Why, wolves? The chamber was too quiet now. Fenrir let the silence stretch. He let them feel the weight of what had just been said. And then, when he knew they were listening, he asked, "Do you understand now?" The Thalanar delegate shifted slightly. Understand what? Fenrir's golden eyes gleamed. Why humanity sent us. No one spoke. They did not send soldiers, Skadi murmured. They did not send diplomats. Fenrir bared his teeth, not in threat but in something far worse. Something knowing. They sent their wolves. Varos opened his mouth but nothing came out. Because now he understood. Humans had a word for it. A concept buried deep in their stories, their history, their myths. Something far older than any council law. Loyalty. Not forced. Not dictated. Not programmed into their biology. But chosen. The pack did not fight for a throne, for territory, for the promises of an empire. They fought for each other. And for humanity. The silence in the chamber was no longer simple tension. It was something deeper. Heavier. The council, in all its power, in all its arrogance, had always assumed that humanity would eventually forget its nature. That over time they would grow soft, compliant, content with the council's rules. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had never considered that humanity was not alone. That even in peace, even in supposed submission, the wolves had been watching, waiting, and now they had come to remind the galaxy of what it had chosen to forget. The chamber doors slammed shut behind Fenrir and Skadi, cutting off the suffocating silence that had gripped the council hall. But the moment the doors sealed, Skadi exhaled, rolling her shoulders as if shaking off an invisible weight. That could have gone worse, she muttered. Fenrir gave her a look. She smirked. I said could have. Behind them, the shadows of the chamber flickered as the hidden wolves moved. The pack had been watching, silent sentinels lurking in the unseen places of the council's great hall. And now they moved as one. We don't have much time, Fenrir said. Varos will rally opposition the moment he recovers from the shock. We need to be ahead of him. A smaller figure slipped from the darkness, barely making a sound. A young scout, one of the newer generations. They've already started, the scout murmured, ears flicking toward their hidden earpiece. Varos called an emergency session. Some of the counselors are breaking off for private talks. The power struggle begins now. Skadi grinned, sharp and knowing. And so does the hunt. The council fractures. Inside the chamber, the moment the wolves left, chaos erupted. The audacity, Varos spat, his mandibles clicking furiously. To come here to threaten us. Enough. The Thalanar delegate's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Varos turned sharply. You. I said enough. The council chamber quieted, though tension crackled in the air. The wolves came here not as conquerors but as messengers, the Thalanar delegate said, their many eyes gleaming. And yet, we reacted as though they held a blade to our throats. Why is that, Chancellor? Varos bristled. Because they did. They're threats. We're not threats. The words hung in the air. Think carefully, Chancellor. They gave us choices. What species offers choices when it seeks war? Varos faltered for just a moment. And in that moment, the fractures in the council deepened. The wolves signal. Fenrir and Skadi moved quickly through the corridors of the council complex, their hidden pack blending seamlessly into the shadows. This way, one of the scouts whispered, leading them to an unmarked service tunnel. As they moved, Skadi's fingers danced over a small hidden communicator. She tapped a short pattern, an ancient rhythm, one older than the council itself. A signal. A call to the unseen. Above them, beyond the artificial sky of the council station, 1,000 waiting ships listened. And they answered. The truth humanity kept hidden. The council had always assumed that humanity had been tamed. That their expansion had halted. That their once mighty fleets had withered into nothing but history. They believed because they wanted to believe. But in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where no council patrols ventured, where no treaties bound the stars, the pack had grown. Not as rulers. Not as conquerors. But as something far worse. Something the council could not control. Something they could not see. A whisper network of loyalists. Hidden shipyards and dead systems. Mercenaries who owed old debts. Forgotten battle stations waiting silently in the void. Humanity had spent generations building what the council never suspected. Not an empire. A pack. And now, the pack was moving. Final warning. The emergency session continued for hours, filled with bitter arguments and barely restrained fear. But before any true decision could be made, Before Varos could solidify his hold, the station shook. Not from weapons fire. Not from an attack. But from the sheer gravitational pull of what had just arrived. The council delegates rushed to the great viewport of the chamber. And then they saw it. A fleet. A fleet of ships that should not exist. Dark hulls built for war but carrying no banners. Ghost ships, emerging from the void like predators rising from the deep. They bore no insignia, no markings of allegiance. Only a single, unmistakable signature pulsing from their transmitters. The pack has returned. Varos staggered back. No. This isn't possible. The Thalanar delegate turned to him, their expression unreadable. It seems the wolves were not exaggerating after all. From the depths of the fleet, a single transmission crackled through. Fenrir's voice. We gave you a choice, Chancellor. You have one last chance to make the right one. The galaxy held its breath. And the wolves? They bared their fangs. The end, for now. The pack has arrived. The council has only moments to decide its fate. Do you want to see what happens next? You know what to do. Subscribe now because the hunt is only beginning.